Here's a NITO study, the effects of drop set resistance training on acute stress indicators and long-term muscle hypertrophy and strength.
Yeah, buddy. Lightweight, baby!
What's up, guys? I'm Josh and I Lift Things, and I'm here to talk about advanced intensity techniques. Are they worth it, overblown, a godsend, or a waste of time? Supersets, drop sets, cluster sets, occlusion training, pre-exhaustion, interset stretching, partial reps, the list goes on and on. So many of these have been overhyped and bastardized by these predatory fitness influencers looking to promise you that the one thing you're missing from your training, look like me by doing this technique, make sure you buy my shitty fucking supplement with my code. There's too many of these to touch on, so I'm just going to go over some of the literature that covers some of the more pertinent ones, and I'll be sure to make videos on individual ones in the future, such as occlusion training. Super interesting, not going to get talked much about in this video. Make sure you subscribe to see it when it comes out. Fucking kill me. First things first, hopefully you watch my training to failure video, but if not, I'm going to recap an important point. Advanced intensity technique is a bit of a misnomer. Intensity in the literature is defined as a percentage of the 1 rep max you lifted, meaning if you can squat 1,000 pounds and then for a set you only squatted 500 pounds, you were training at an intensity of 50%. When discussing how hard a set is or ways to take a set past failure, such as by doing partial reps, you are no longer talking about intensity. You are now talking about effort, or how hard a set was. This matters because if you did partial reps with a super light weight once you have hit failure, that is a very low intensity. Think about it. It's a light weight, meaning you can do it many times, meaning the load is a small percentage of your 1 rep max. That would be a very hard set, a very high effort set, but the intensity would be quite low. Therefore, when you're doing a superset or a partial rep, you are doing nothing in relation to your 1 rep max. Instead, you are altering how far you are going in proximity to failure. This means that the proper term should be like an advanced effort technique, or what's been said in the literature a bit, advanced lifting techniques, but those don't really sell as well. So in this video, I'm going to be covering a lot of these advanced techniques. If you like some or all of these and you want more in-depth videos on each of these in particular, please let me know. I'll make sure to add them to the list. Here we have maximizing muscle hypertrophy, a systematic review of advanced resistance training techniques and methods. They cover tempo eccentric technique. They cover accentuated eccentric loading method. They cover low load resistance training under blood flow restriction, cluster sets, supersets and pre-exhaustion, drop sets, and sarcoplasma stimulating training technique. And from the conclusion, they talk about the basics of getting stronger, which is mechanical tension and metabolic stress. Here they say to maximize muscle growth, you should have 3 to 6 sets of 6 to 12 repetitions with 60-second rest intervals and a moderate intensity of 60 to 80%, with a training volume of about 12 to 28 sets per muscle per week. I don't agree with all of that, but what are you going to do? Here they say you can integrate advanced resistance training techniques to break through plateaus, prevent monotony, and reduce the time of training sessions. Furthermore, even though most of these techniques and methods did not show a superior hypertrophy response compared to the traditional approach, it may serve as an alternative to prevent monotony, or it could improve readiness to training sessions. They also touched multiple times on the time efficiency of it, and we will get into that later. In summary, currently there is not sufficient evidence to provide specific guidelines for volume, intensity of effort, and frequency of the previously mentioned resistance training techniques. Here's another study, repeated bouts of advanced strength training techniques, effects on volume load, metabolic responses, and muscle activation in trained individuals. With a William Wallace. Yo, this dude wrote this paper? That's fucking sick. Here they talk about some of the benefits. For instance, pre-exhaustion A group produced greater muscle excitation than pre-exhaustion B and superset in the sternocostal head specifically. However, it then demonstrated a trend to decrease overall muscle excitation when the technique was repeated the following session. There was more acute muscle swelling, so a bigger pump for some things, which makes sense, but we know a pump isn't directly responsible for hypertrophy. And here he says that these advanced techniques have traditionally been used as a means to optimize metabolic stress, volume load, and neuromuscular responses. Our data did not project differences in these variables compared to traditional strength training. However, it is important to note that different advanced techniques might produce slight changes in volume load, muscle excitation, and fluid accumulation in strengthening individuals from session to session. I think we can all agree on that. You start doing more partials to failure, and yeah, you get a bigger pump. Great. Sick. Here we have the effects of range of motion on resistance training adaptations, a systematic review and meta-analysis. This is particular to look at partial reps. Here they flat out say full ROM training produced significantly greater adaptations than partial ROM on muscle strength and lower limb hypertrophy. Furthermore, although not statistically significant, changes in functional performance were maximized by the full ROM Finally, no significant superiority of either ROM was found to produce changes in muscle thickness, pennation angle, and fascicle length. Granted, that is just full range of motion versus partial range of motion. What about throwing partials in at the end? Probably useful, maybe we'll see. Here's a NITO study, the effects of drop set resistance training on acute stress indicators and long-term muscle hypertrophy and strength. From the conclusions here, they say that drop sets may enhance the hypertrophic response to RT. Even though the exact hypertrophic mechanisms of drop set training is not yet clear, the high metabolic and mechanical stress and muscle damage might lead to superior anabolic responses compared to straight training. Drop set training may be an efficient way to increase muscle mass with minimal time spent training. However, the hypertrophic increases appear to occur without corresponding increases in muscle strength. They talk about the limitations up here longer, but we can move on. Here's the effect of drop sets with resistance training on increases in muscle cross-sectional area, strength, and endurance, a pilot study. Here they say that the cross-sectional area increased similarly in all three conditions, and maximum isometric and 1 rep max strength of the elbow flexors increased from pre to post only in the HL and SDS conditions. HL being high load, and then SDS being single high load. It says that they can be useful for lowering training time compared to typical resistance exercise protocols using only high or low loads. Here's a big study. Crescent, pyramid, and drop set systems do not promote greater strength gains, muscle hypertrophy, and changes on muscle architecture compared with traditional resistance training in well-trained men. Cross-sectional area increased significantly and similarly for all protocols. All protocols showed significant and similar increases in leg press and leg extension, 1 rep max load. All protocols increased PA. Conclusion, drop sets and pyramids do not promote greater gains in strength or muscle hypertrophy. Another one by Schoenfeld, can drop set training enhance muscle growth? You guys can go find this one. It's a very interesting read. Turns out maybe. Cool study you may not have thought of. Hypotensive responses of reciprocal supersets versus traditional resistance training in apparently healthy men. Essentially, they're warning that your blood pressure can get fucked after doing some supersets. So be careful, I guess. Here we have the acute effect of upper-lower body supersets versus traditional set configurations on bar execution velocity and volume. Essentially, they're saying that these advanced techniques caused a very similar neuromuscular performance as compared to traditional training, but in a more time-efficient manner. And then finally, we have the effects of traditional superset and tri-set resistance training structures on perceived intensity and physiological responses. It seems that supersets and tri-sets can enhance training efficiency and reduce training time. However, acute and short-term physiological responses differ between protocols. Athletes can utilize supersets and tri-sets resistance training, but may require additional recovery post-training to minimize the effects of fatigue. So essentially, what this comes down to is efficiency. If your goal is to get as close to failure as possible while spending the least amount of time as possible in the gym, which is a valiant goal, I would never hate on that, these advanced lifting techniques could probably be good for you. Maybe you can train with lighter loads, but use some of these techniques and achieve similar results, which could be great for like injury prevention or even like a rehab routine. Maybe even the elderly or the obese or other sensitive populations that may have a harder time adjusting to a strict traditional resistance training program. But in general, they don't really seem to outperform good old lifting. You guys know how all these videos end. Do whatever the fuck you want to do and whatever fits your lifestyle. It will all be okay and it'll probably all work. All roads lead to Rome. There's multiple ways to skin a cat. Other weird phrases from like the 50s. It really doesn't matter. And guys, that is the video. If you like this style of content, like the video. If you like it, leave a comment. Let me know why you hate me or why you love me. I respond to every single one of them and it really helps out the channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button because I post a new video every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you want to be alerted when it goes up. And then finally, share to a buddy. If you really like this style of content, you can follow all of these socials that have been on screen the entire video. They will be linked down in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.